So does anyone have any questions?
Avi, this is Tiffany. I have a quick question. I know the answer to this, but a lot of people may not. You had mentioned to me at one point that you make your own beats, and that was one of the things that makes you different from some other people who are just using like a karaoke track. So you have basically a machine or an instrument that's hooked up to a computer that you can do that, correct?
Um, Sort of correct. I mean, yes, it's completely correct that we make, with the exception of we've done, I think, 3 or 4 covers. The vast majority of our songs, so about 99 songs, I think that we've done that are original, maybe over 100 at this point. Um, uh, but it's not necessarily an instrument. So actually, I'll go back to sharing just so I can queue up some imagery here. So coming back to, okay. So here you can see, so yeah, he has a keyboard that's hooked up to the computer, but most of the time when we use the keyboard, it's more in terms of composition and coming up with riffs or notes. He's not recording the keyboard into the computer. So the software we're using here, we use 2 pieces of software for our sound. So one is FL Studio, which is really great for sequencing and for putting in composition, the beats, etc. So so Bo is incredibly talented. So is Mehdi. We have a lot of great producers. So they'll come up with the melody, come up with the drums, come up with they choose which instruments they want to use. I think we have over like 9,000 instruments to choose from at this point, because he's always finding new free packages of instruments. And with those, he composes all the different parts, or Mehdi compose. It's a group effort often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so from that, as you guys mentioned, I am now teaching music technology, and the first, we're now in the 4th week of the school year. So we're finishing up with FL Studio in that class next week. So it's about 5 weeks. The first 5 weeks are devoted to theory and composition and this software. And then from there, we move into Pro Tools, which is more, after that, recording vocals. And if I'm going to record an instrument, I'm not usually going to record in FL Studio. I'll usually record it into Pro Tools. So in some of our videos, you'll see violins, or I think in one case we had a trumpet. And sometimes guitars, but usually the vast majority of our music is composed in this software.
Okay, thanks. That totally answered my question.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, so thanks, Avi. Just wanted to point out now, this is the period of general Q&A for STEM music videos. So your questions for Avi are very welcome, but also your questions for Dave and Gary, if you have those. So all are hopefully available and willing to answer your questions. And I hope all 3 of you are looking for the chat window to find those questions.
So Walter, I really like that question, because there's a lot that goes into answering that. So Walter says, I missed the beginning, so ignore this if you've already addressed it. Do you have to take active steps to get knowledge transfer from one generation of students to the next? So one of the things that made this club incredibly draining and incredibly taxing for me as a sponsor was exactly that, not even between generations. In the first couple of years of the club, I would find myself training a student one-on-one after school, or even one-on-3, in any number of the steps. And there's a lot of them, right? They're doing the research, they're writing the lyrics, they're using Pro Tools to record, using FL Studio to make instrumentals. There's vocal skills, there's filming, there's editing. The thing that was the most taxing I found was the producing, so making the beats, and the filming, because many people sing in their shower. Every kid wants to be the next big rapper, so it hasn't been that hard to find vocalists. And similarly, a lot of people write poetry. It's not that hard to find lyricists. And in a school, and we have a pretty good school system, pretty good curriculum. We have a lot of good students that are good at doing the research and finding the content. And a lot of kids use their cameras all the time. So really it came down to editing and producing as the main things that took a lot of time to teach people. And what I found was there was a huge amount of attrition. I'd spend a lot of time teaching a handful of kids, and then they leave. and I felt like I'd spent a lot of time and it had gone down the drain. I wouldn't say to waste, because now they have this skill and they're going to go off and do other things, but it was a lot of time I spent that I'm now not getting back. So it was actually one of my evaluation years where they asked me, what are some of your next career steps? And I said that I'd really like to be able to make this a class, so that I could, there'd be a little bit more, structure is not the right word, a little more consistency in terms of when people enroll, they'll definitely be set to it. Because then if I have a class of 25, for instance, if one of those kids joins the club, that's now a kid that can do all of the skills, because I teach audio and video and music tech. By the end of first semester, each student has made their own music video. And so with that in mind, that in itself has made me feel a lot more calm in terms of the sustainability of the skills. However, even before the class had ended, a lot of the students started taking it upon themselves to recruit their own proteges, if you will. So for example, you saw Bo. Bo was the kid, he's currently president. And he has probably about half of the kids you saw in this video were his friends that he's over time brought into the club. The vocalist on the chorus, Damon, this is his first, he only started singing on any of our songs as of last April, I think. And now he loves singing. He's in the studio every day. Christian just started editing at the end of last year and now wants to edit everything. And so he edited this documentary. So as it starts to become a more established thing that people are like, oh, I can do this, or I want to do this. More people are joining, more people are invested. And now they're making them for others. So almost every club in the school has asked one of the kids at some point to help them make a music video for their Chipotle fundraisers. So we had there was a moment last year where I think almost every week there was a different Chipotle fundraiser music video. Not even necessarily put on by 4SW kids, but many times facilitated. So like the other kids would come up with their song or their lyrics, and then 4SW kids would help them run the studio. But they would do the editing and all that stuff. So it's, the bottom line is it's much like, I guess a good way, it's like succession, ecological succession, where once you have enough soil, and in this case, once you have a base of culture in the school, it will grow itself. It becomes much easier for the roots to take place. Does that answer your question, Walter? Awesome. Are there other questions for me or any of the other panelists?
So we have for all three presenters, Gary, Dave, and Avi, what are mistakes to avoid when making your videos?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You know, it's hard to answer that question because what we've seen are so many different types of videos for a number of different purposes. I think, at least in my experience, the worst mistake is not giving enough structure to the kids and not giving them the resources. Now, my students are, you know, they're not music students, they're not theater students, so this is a totally new thing for them. And sometimes doing this as a group exercise removes anxiety among students, as opposed to making each student do an individual video. Anyway, those are just some thoughts.
Yeah, from my perspective, I would say just don't be afraid to put yourself out there. From the very first video to the most recent one we've done, I think every video you create, you always see something you want to fix, and you just keep that in mind for next time. So you can just keep on building off your previous success. But I would really just say, just don't be afraid to put yourself out there and just keep making changes from where you are.
This is going to be kind of a backwards response. I'd say the biggest mistake is to not finish. So I think one of the reasons Challenge Thursdays have taken such a hold in the club is for a long time we didn't finish projects. For the first year and a half, there were only about 2 or 3 songs we finished. So finally, the president at the time and I came up with this idea for Challenge Thursdays, just to make sure that we had something at the end of the day. And so that once a month, we would be sure that we'd have a whole music video at the end of the day, no matter what. We weren't going to give up. It was going to be a complete one. As good as it was or as bad as it was going to be done. And in the process, things have gotten more efficient. People gained more confidence. It became something that people would come and try out the club for and enjoy. And so, so not finishing things and not completing things definitely was a huge impediment for a long time. So I think just the feeling of having completed something is crucial to the growth here. But in terms of something that is a detriment to videos in general, I found lighting is a huge issue, making sure you have good lighting. And in terms of having good footage for editing, make sure that if you're using multiple sources that you have the same frame rate. Because what I found is if your frame rate is different between a bunch of different sources, then the rendering in any editing software is really, really, really hampered. And so that was a early thing we had to figure out, was to make sure that we were using consistent technology and consistent settings.
Yeah, I guess I would probably like to add in on that too. If you're doing a video kind of in the style that we're doing, we do multiple takes, probably at least 2, 3, 4 takes of every scene or everything that you see to get the best quality. Because if one kid falls out of place, it might ruin that entire shot. So we do the same thing over quite a few times. And once you have a lot of footage to work with, it kind of helps you out a bit.
I wanted to say something about microphones. I think Bill talked about snowball mics, and that's a good studio mic. We do a lot of outside recording, and we use a H4n Zoom mic. It's a recording quality mic, but it's digital and it's completely portable. So, you know, you can use it outside and not worry about it at all. They're about $250 or so, so they're, you know, they're quite reasonably priced.
Can I ask a question? I'm wondering, so some of us like me don't really have any experience making videos, but I understand that storyboarding is a thing in the video world. For all of you, do you or your students do a lot of storyboarding to sketch out the overall flow of the video? If not, why not?
Not as much as I would like. They do sometimes, and when they do, it's very good. The reason we don't often do it is because Challenge Thursdays are fast, and a lot of the things that in Challenge Thursday are happening simultaneously. So while the beat's being made, the lyric idea is already coming together. While the recording is being made, the lyrics are now being put into subtitles in the video. While the recording is being mixed, they're out filming their recording, and hopefully they know their lyrics by now, because that's something that can come up. If they don't know their lyrics yet, their mouthing isn't matching it. So ideally, we would need to have people making imagery or making animations or things to fill in at certain points during the storyboards. But usually what ends up happening is they take a long time on the song or a long time on the filming, and we end up not having a whole lot of time for the editing. So it's gotten down to now, I think we edit the videos together in like 20, 30 minutes, because at this point it's already like 7 or 8. And so as a result, even if we had a storyboard for it, we're not usually always able to follow it. We do this thing called multicam, where we see all the different footage at once. So there's a lot of different techniques, but there's this thing called pluralize that will sync up all the footage with the audio. So assuming the music was playing while we were shooting the video, it'll sync up all the pieces of footage that we have with all the pieces of audio we have. And so now it's just a question with multicam of selecting which piece of footage you want to cut to at any different moment. And so that makes the editing happen way faster. But it totally takes, that's not really something that functions alongside storyboarding that well.
I would say from my perspective, for the really important math content that we're trying to present, we start with that and we say, all right, this is going to be a chalkboard scene where we have it written out and explain things when necessary. So that's where we start, because that's really the focus of the videos, to teach the math. From there, then we'll try to get a classroom scene of kids, maybe to kind of tell a story. And then the third part of that is all the random parts in the song where we don't know what to do. Really, the kids have come up with a lot of great ideas. For us, at least, we'll say, well, we got this, we need some filler. And the kids like, how about we sit on the stairs? How about we do this move? So the kids actually do have some creativity and some choices, but really we focus on the math content first, then kind of the story part of it for the big classroom scenes. And the kids help us out with all the fun filler stuff.
Most of the videos that I make don't really have video. The Rat Snake video, I wrote the song, I recorded the song, and then I fit the video to the song. And so I suppose you could call that storyboarding, but, I think of it in the movie sense where, you got a wall with 85 different pieces of paper on it. And I certainly don't do anything like that. I can't even call myself a dilettante video maker compared to these folks.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you, Avi, Gary, and Dave.